I'm super excited to share today's guest. It's Antonia Gavrihel. She's a breakout author and happens to be my mom, and wrote this book over 25 years ago and struggled to get a publisher, finally found one, and is just seeing a ton of success with it. It's a wonderful story, a romance novel that's not too romantic, but it's about friendship and the power of friendship. And I don't give too much away, but I'm just super proud of her, and I know that you're going to absolutely love this episode. It's a little different, but you're going to learn a lot about her writing process, some of the struggles that she went through, and some of the things that you'll take away as a reader. The book is called Back to One, and movies, film are a big part of this. So if you love good music and you're a big film buff, then you're going to absolutely love this story. The other cool thing that we're doing is we're rolling out this very small NFT project in tandem with the book release. So you can actually get a signed copy when you buy one of these NFTs. And because I know not everyone is familiar with NFTs, there's actually a portion of these that you can buy in US dollars and will airdrop to your wallet if you've got one. And if you don't have one, then we'll help you set up a wallet and get you the NFT that way. So you can buy some the traditional way. You can buy some through in fiat and with US dollars. And we're going to hold a couple back as well for giveaways. So super, super excited. Definitely check that out. You can visit her stuff at antoniagavrihel.com. Without further ado, let's get to today's episode of the Silicon Alley Podcast featuring the Antonia Gavrihel. Are you interested in growing and scaling your business? Welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast, where you'll hear from entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and top performers on what it truly takes to grow and scale a business. You'll walk away with actionable insights you can apply in your own business and life. Now to William Glass, the CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. Super excited to have you on today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yes, so I'm excited to talk to you for a couple of reasons. Antonia Gavrihel, also known as Ann Glass, aka my mom. So
That's right.
Really excited to sit down and specifically talk about a book that you've been working on for a very long time called Back to One.
Yes.
Do you mind giving the audience a little context on the history behind this story?
Well, in 1994, when you were just a little tot, I began writing this book. I would come home, we would have dinner, have some fun time, and then you go to sleep. And then I would sit down at what was kind of a makeshift desk with my brand new computer, 1994, of course, brand new computer. And I would start to craft this story about this married woman who had a small child, who really meets someone she should never have met, and they become best friends. And he's actually a Hollywood movie star with a tabloid reputation, and to the world it looks like an odd relationship, but it's really a very wonderful relationship. And I would write these little tales from about midnight to 3 o'clock in the morning, because there was very little distraction at that time of night, and I seemed to be most creative then. It took me about a year with editing to get the book ready to go out to publishers. And then I started to submit and receive those wonderful collections of rejection letters. And I also submitted to production companies because I tend to write as if I'm viewing a movie, and then I write what I see. So I thought this would translate very well into a movie, to a motion picture. So I would also send it out to production companies, literary agents, and I did for many, many years, for 26 years.
It's a really cool story that over the course of 26 years to get to this point where it's being published, and you've gone through all these different rejections. It's very similar to the startup world, right? Going to VCs and pitching and getting those rejections and those no's, and you're kind of the baby that you've been working on, and you've got this vision, and it's getting that across to other people. So I'm curious, that's taking a step back. So where did the idea to start writing come from? Have you always been a writer? Where did that creativity to start writing come from?
Well, unfortunately, growing up, I was a latchkey child. So I would come home from school, and I had my little key, and I would get in the house, and my parents were not home to take care of me. So I would just sit in my room and write, because it was a release. It was a way of creating a world for myself that was full of friends and quite enjoyable. And I just fell in love with writing at that point. I was very young when I started doing this.
What type of stories? Was it always been fiction? Was it more just, what's that process?
It was mostly fiction, although I did write some screenplays and some plays. So I did a lot of that as well. Anything I could act out, because I was by nature an actress. I came from an entertainment world. My parents were entertainers. I was surrounded by that, and my mother put me in front of a camera when I was quite young. So I view everything as, like I said, a film. The actress in that film, or my characters are the actors in the film.
Love that. So how did that growing up impact you in terms of thinking about like the creativity? You mentioned parents were in entertainment. Can you talk about how that plays into the story?
Well, I had a delightful childhood, despite the latchkey part of it. I had a really wonderful childhood. Growing up with entertainment parents can be tricky, but for me it was wonderful. I would love to visit my father on a film set. I would love to sit in a recording studio as my mother cut an album. To me, it was wonderful to watch my parents be childlike, because when they were performing, their youth, their excitement, their creativity came out. And to see my parents from that point of view, almost on a daily basis, was quite fulfilling. It allowed me, my father always told me, you do something in your life every day, and you shouldn't be miserable doing it. And there's nothing more wonderful than taking a talent and creating a living from that. And that's what my parents did. So I had that as a role model for me. And I thoroughly enjoyed my childhood. My brother's incredibly creative, my older brother. So, I mean, with those three people in my life surrounding me, I was able to continue to create for myself.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, being in that environment and getting to see your parents be, as you said, youthful and playful and creative and make people laugh and do these different things. So how did that play? How does that play into the story, right? Because you mentioned that there's a Hollywood actor as one of the main characters. Talk to me a little bit about the story itself.
Well, the story was created out of my own, I would say, need for a friend, loneliness maybe even. And so, I mean, obviously Catherine is me. I would say the better parts of me. And actually Robbie is you. Because he's a 3-year-old. The rest of that is really, it's my own fantasy world. I mean, obviously I do not know a Kyle. So it was something that I just started to develop and think, wouldn't this be wonderful if this would occur? And that's where the book came from. And I tried to make sure that both Kyle and Kate were the type of characters that people could relate to, that they could look in the mirror and say, that person's my friend, or that could be me, or something very relatable. And I think that I accomplished that. But the book was written truly to make me happy. It was a story that I could only dream would come true. So it was really my own personal adventure, you might say, that I created. And so other people liking it really excites me, because I really did write it for myself. But then again, I'd always heard, even when I would take creative writing classes in high school and in college, I would hear, you write what you know. I know myself. So you write what you know, and you really do write not for a specific audience, but you write for yourself. If it entertains you, if it excites you, then other people will feel that and relate to it.
Absolutely. And I think that that's something that really stands out, is that early on you develop this interest in the characters. You really want to know what happens. You can relate to them, as you said. And I think that's something that your writing really shows. And part of that goes, I think, to the dialogue, right? Your experience acting and performing, you kind of understand how people communicate in real life, and being able to put that on the page, but have it as you're reading be something that you can visualize and picture, I think is really, really something that stands out to me. I've obviously a little biased, but I've read the book now over the number of years and
Yes.
seen it kind of transform. And I think that's something that you do very, very well.
Well, thank you. And I always write the dialogue first. Every writer has their own method. My method is to get the story down, and the story for me is always in the dialogue. So I get the story down, then I play it back in my head as if it's a movie and write what I see for the action. And I've always done it that way. Even when I was a child, that's the way I wrote.
So when you're writing the dialogue, though, you're not picturing it. You're just picturing the conversation, and then you add the action?
Well, I picture... That's an interesting way of putting it. I do picture it, but not as fully as when I go back and play it again in my head. And then I'm focusing not on the dialogue anymore. I'm focusing on what's happening with the dialogue, what's happening behind the dialogue.
Okay.
So it's really kind of a two-step process for me. Going back and filling in the action. He picked up the glass and took a sip. Something as simple as that creates a picture and an environment, and you understand where the dialogue is actually coming from by the physical actions. It's very symbiotic. You have to have both, and you have to have them so that they mesh. So that's how I've always written.
Awesome. No, that makes sense. I've had that question, and I've been waiting to ask you that.
Yes.
That specific follow-up question of if you write the dialogue first, what are you picturing?
I am picturing it, just not as
yeah.
intensely as I do when I play it back in my head, because no longer is the focus on the dialogue or the story that's already there. Now it's what's happening behind the dialogue. Yeah.
So what is something that you hope a reader takes away from the story?
Everything is based on friendship. Whether it's a marriage or a love affair or just your buddies, friendship has to be the basis. If you don't have that as the basis, then there's something lacking. It's not real. It's not tangible at that point. So friendship becomes the main focus. There's 2 quotes in there by Aristotle. And the ironic part about it is when I'm not sure which one he wrote first, but his definition of what love is almost identical to his definition of friendship. So I thought and I was a philosophy major, so I thought that's very fascinating that he linked those together, because they are completely linked.
And you brought in Aristotle and philosophy into the
Yes.
story, and you've got Hollywood and acting, you've got Alabama and the South.
In the South and Florida, yes.
So you've got all these different cultures and ideas that are wrapped up into this one story about a friendship.
Right. And children. Children play a big part in it. One of the things that draw the 2 characters together is they both have small children. And Kyle's kind of trying to figure out how to be a good father. And watching Kate be a good mother helps him to understand what is necessary to be a good father as well. So they help each other in that respect. And I think the children benefit from that quite a bit in the relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the story of you were trying to sell this book. You talked to a number of people. Can you talk about some of those rejections? Are there any that stand out?
Well, there were actually 2 near misses, as I call them. One was a literary agent in Beverly Hills. I flew out to meet with him, and I was very excited because, that's the door opener, is having the literary agent to go to the publisher, to present to the publishers. And you're not really, there are some publishers who will look at your work without a literary agent, but I think it gives you a lot of credibility if you have that layer of communication through a literary agent. So I was in Beverly Hills, and he really enjoyed the story. He liked it a great deal. Came back, and he said he had too many people in that genre, and he didn't want to take on another writer in that genre. Which was interesting because I could never figure out what my genre was. I really struggled with that for a long time because it wasn't a romance novel. This isn't a romance, and it wasn't just straight up fiction, I didn't think. So I really struggled with what my genre was, and so he rejected me based on too many people in that genre, whatever that might have been. And then the other one was a production company, a major production company, was filming out of Tucson. And I lived in Phoenix at the time. Well, no, actually, I didn't live in Phoenix. I was living here, but I was visiting family. My family still lived in Phoenix. And so I went down and met with the production company and gave them a copy. And I never heard anything back. For all I know, it got dumped in the trash can. But I actually was able to meet with the production company. So that was pretty exciting to me. A little disappointing. I never heard from them, but yeah, very exciting.
Yeah. So had a couple near misses, and then it sat on the shelf for a while. Were you active?
I decided to go to law school. And as an adult, I decided to just go back to law school and go to law school and become an attorney. And while I was in law school, my focus had to be on studying because I still worked full time and went to law school at the same time. I have a little drawer under my bed. It was placed in that drawer, and that's where it kind of made a cozy little home for a while. I would bring it out when I would be feeling down, and I would reread it because it always cheered me up. Then the summer of COVID, 2020, hit. And you came to visit and stay with me for a while, which was wonderful. I loved it. But one of the first things you said to me was, Mom, I do not want to sit and watch marathon TV with you for however many months we're going to be doing this. And you suggested, if I remember correctly, what did you ever do with that book that you wrote? And I said, it's in the drawer. And you said, well, why don't you pull it out and update it? Because you've always complained you wrote it in 95 and it's a little dated. It had video stores and things like that in it. So I decided that was a good idea. And I pulled it out and I updated the book and brought it not all the way to present, because once I got to the end of updating the book, another book appeared. Same characters continuing their story. And I didn't want to get into the netherworlds of time where the book was basically placed in 2024, but we don't know what happens in 2024 because we're not there yet. Mm-hmm. So instead of bringing it all the way up to date, I brought it up by 10 years to 2005. Okay. And I started from there. And I still had video stores, which was good because I could leave that in there. So I brought it up to date, had to change my music. Music is a big deal in the book. So I had to change my songs because that would make Kate and Kyle born later than what they were in the original book. And so their musical interests would be different, obviously, if they were born in a different decade. Once you went back to New York, I happened to bump into a good friend of mine, and he knows you, and asked me what was I doing during this time of hibernation that everybody seemed to do. And I said, William came to visit, and darn if that kid didn't make me pull out a book I wrote years ago and update the book. And he looked at me and he said, did I ever tell you that I know somebody who's in publishing and I could maybe get this to them? Would you like me to do that? And it's like, please, yes, definitely, please. And he submitted the book for me and made the introductions. I submitted the book, and within a week or so, I had a contract. And my publisher loves my two main characters quite a bit and asked me to consider doing a second book, which I then said, well, I've already finished the second book. And he said, keep going. So I have kept going, and I have finished the fourth book.
Wow. That's a really awesome journey. And obviously it sounds like putting yourself out there and talking about what you're working on and being excited helped introduce you to the publisher and the right person.
Yes. And I always believe that things happen in the right time. And I think back often, if this had happened 24 years ago to me, back when I originally wrote the book, would I be this happy? Would I be this appreciative? Maybe, maybe not. But having waited this long period of time and gone through all the struggles and the rejections, it's incredible. I've never been this happy in my entire life. Never been this happy. Consistently happy. It's not an up and down thing. It's a consistently happy, which motivated me to write the other books. Being on this kind of excitement or high, so to speak, is what allowed me to kind of open up that creativity again and continue the journeys for the two of them.
Yeah. That's awesome, and obviously I can feel the energy, and I know how excited you are, and it makes me happy to see you happy.
Yeah.
And I'm super proud of what you've been able to accomplish and excited. Can you talk about what your goals are for the book and what you'd ideally like the story of Kate and Kyle to be long term?
Well, the problem with that is that it gives away too much.
Well, I'm not telling you to give away the storyline.
They're really substantial characters. And I think a series of books with those two characters has longevity. And I really do feel that, I mean, the first book is the first 4 years of their relationship as friends. The second book is 10 years. The third book is about 8 years. And then the fourth book is a surprise.
What do you envision, like, ideally happening to the book itself, right? So you got into the characters. I was more thinking about, you mentioned that you submitted this to production companies. Like,
I would love to see it made into a movie. And I'm talking about big screen. I really think that these are the type of characters that if a production company, if a producer found this material and a screenplay was well written, I would love to help with that. I think that this could be a franchise for someone.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I think that the quality of the characters, the storytelling, and then also, as you said, the way that you write, coming from the entertainment background, adapting this into a screenplay and putting it on the big screen is a very easy task relative to other novels where there's a lot of descriptive words and things. I think that's something that's really interesting is you've asked other people, well, who would you pick to play Kyle or Kate or characters in a movie? And everyone has a different answer.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
And I realize that that's part of the way that you described it. You describe enough where someone can put in their vision of who would fulfill that role. But you're not saying, here's, every single detail of their character, but it allows that kind of vision for anyone to morph it to what, excites them and how they connect with the characters, which is something that I really like.
Yeah. And some of the people that they've come up with, I think to myself, no, I don't think, but I don't say it because that's their vision. And let that be their vision. That's fine. People have often asked me, did you base Kyle on anyone? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Kyle is kind of my ideal man. So, and it's funny because I can visualize all the characters, except Kyle. It's a weird phenomenon. I can see his eyes, I can see his smile, I can see expressions, but to see Kyle, I've never really been able to see him. And I think it's because, for me, he's such and when I say perfect man, he's not flawless. He has plenty of flaws. But for me, it's very hard to visualize that person. There's no face. I mean, just like I said, just expressions.
Just really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't know how other writers write, but I would imagine that they typically have some sort of vision for all of their characters.
Yeah.
And it's really, really interesting.
But I have visions for all the other ones. I mean, I know exactly what Ben looks like. I know exactly what Tracy looks like. I know what all those characters look like. I know what Scott looks like. I know what Robbie looks like. But I just can't really picture him.
What have you learned throughout this process? Obviously, it's been a long journey and it's far from over. It's really picking up steam, I would say, more than anything. And probably at the beginning, so to speak, which is crazy to say after 26 years. But what have you learned throughout this process that someone else that is thinking about writing
persistence
could go through?
I have on my class ring from law school, in Italian, the word resilience. And I think that's what a good writer has to be. You have to have persistence and resilience. You have to be able to be flexible. If an editor doesn't like something in your book, take a look. They might have a much better idea. Because when you write a book, you kind of narrow your focus a bit. And it's nice to have input from others where they say, you know what, I don't really like the way that works, but if we did this instead, And my editor is absolutely phenomenal. So that was the kind of input I would receive. And it's like, okay, fine, let me go try it. And I tried it, and it was so much better than what I had written. And it's like, wow, that really improved it so much.
Do you have an example?
Yes. I had a therapist session. Actually, I had 3 of them in the book. And my editor said, nobody really wants to hear somebody having a therapy session. Not really. So why don't we change it to maybe he's having a drink with his buddy? It's like, okay, well, I can do that. And so one of the minor characters became a much more major character because he took the place of the therapist when they were just having drinks. So that was kind of interesting and it worked out so much better doing that. And I really appreciated that input. And what's really exciting to me is when you have a book like this, you have a book launch team. And that's about 30 people that you know, that you respect their opinions. You give them what is known as the advanced reader copy, the ARC. So it's not quite perfect yet. And you get their input and hear what they have to say. And I always felt, well, women will love this book. What's really just completely shocked me in a wonderful way is my male readers love this book. And I think, well, that's great. That is absolutely wonderful. Kyle is so relatable to men. And the whole situation, I mean, I'm sure everyone in their lifetime has had an opposite sex friend that everybody else looked at and thought, oh, you guys aren't just friends. And it's like, well, yeah, we really are just friends. And almost fighting a battle to prove the quality of your friendship. So I think it's a very relatable situation for most people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really comes across. And, I love the advice of staying persistent and continuing to work towards what it is that you want to accomplish with a book or a project that you're working on, and then being able to take input, be able to take feedback and implement it. I think that, as you said, helped kind of connect the dots in a way, because the story was great and I've seen it develop over the years.
Yes.
But it really came together in a way that was is just, you fly through it.
Yeah.
So
it is an easy read. It's a very easy read, I think. And it really is in 2 sections. I hope people pick up on that. But I actually change Catherine's name. In the first part of the book, she is Catherine. But in the second part of the book, she's Kate. And that's because her life has changed. And that's to kind of demonstrate that. She has a new life. She uses a new name now. It's not as formal, because Catherine's a fairly formal name. And there will still be people who will call her Catherine. Her brother will always call her Catherine because that's the way they were raised. Her mother will always call her Catherine. But for everyone else, for all the new people in her life, Kate is much more fun, almost personality that comes out of that name. You just feel that exude from the name.
Yeah. And where can people get the book?
Everywhere. It will be released November 2nd, and you can get it on Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Little Professor, any book dealer, Costco. I mean, everywhere you can get books, and you can get the ebook as well. And we're aiming for somewhere around January, February, having audio.
Okay. You're doing yourself, correct?
Which I am, yes. I'm going to do myself. I'm very excited about it. Like I said, it's a dream come true. It's a dream come true. A dream I have to admit, and I probably should share this, that when I first sent the book to the publisher, there was a lot of trepidation in that, because the book is almost like a child to me. And I felt, what if he really hates this book? I don't know if I could handle that rejection one more time. So it was wonderful that they loved the book, but it really, it has been with me so long, just like a child would be with me, that it's very, very special to me in that regard.
Makes sense. It's also probably part of the reason why people are able to connect with it, right? Because there is so much of the things that you said you were, visualizing that you needed at the time that you were writing it that comes through. Mm-hmm. That kind of connection.
Yes. Yes.
There's also some other interesting things that we're doing around the book to help market and sell it. So if you're not familiar, the goal is to be a New York Times best-selling author, right?
Yes.
And so that means, for those that aren't familiar, the way that you get on the New York Times best-selling author list, it's not actually total sales. Certain sales channels matter more. Also, different types of orders, not just one big bulk order. So it's not just based on how many books sold, but it's based on number of sales across different suppliers.
Across the country.
And so the big push is that if you're listening to this, please pre-order. If you're listening to this before November 2nd, 2021, on Barnes & Noble, and then afterwards...
Everywhere.
Purchase everywhere.
Yes. Barnes & Noble pre-orders roll into the first week of sales, so...
Yeah.
That would up the first week of sales tremendously.
Yep, and bestseller lists are based on weekly sales. So the pre-order is a push to hopefully get on the list right off the bat.
Right, but only through Barnes & Noble.
Only through
at this point, yes.
At this point in time. So Barnes & Noble if you're pre-ordering, and then after,
everywhere.
Wherever you get your books.
Amazon, everywhere.
And we've also got an interesting NFT project that we're rolling out. So there's going to be first editions, essentially NFTs of the covers that people can get. There's a limited number of those. They come with a signed copy.
Yes.
It's kind of a unique thing that I don't think anyone else has really done when it comes to books.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been an exciting journey for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with? Any other stories or anything that you want to make sure that we share?
If they would go to my website, there's actually a couple cute stories on there that they could read about. And it's AntoniaGavrihel.com.
Which I'll link to in the show notes.
Yes, so it's all one word. And I would just appreciate everyone's support, and I know that they'll love it. So enjoy the book.
Awesome.
Enjoy the book.
Well, thanks for sitting down. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
On your way out, please share the podcast with others. It's the only way that the community grows and others hear these incredible stories from entrepreneurs and top performers. And of course, pound that subscribe button so you get notified when episodes drop every Friday. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Have a very profitable day.
You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle saying